That's the different version that we've never seen before, and that's exactly what Qadir is doing here. And I want to actually see this deck in action because I never have before.
I know that Brian Kibler is a big fan of Gyre Sage against decks that do not have Supreme Verdict, and not a fan of that card against decks with Supreme Verdict.
Sure.
So
Well, he knows green cards better than we do.
Yes.
That's for sure.
we're in a non-Supreme Verdict matchup, so we'll see how it goes.
Flores with a Soldier of the Pantheon to start the show. Going to go down to 18 to do so. Qadir going to play a Gyre Sage. So here it is. One of my favorite cards, actually. I think that this card is another powerful card that is underrepresented in Magic right now.
Certainly. I mean, there's, again, a lot of Supreme Verdict decks, and Gyre Sage, much like Experiment 1 and Evolved Creatures in general, underrepresented because it forces you to overextend into Supreme Verdict. But any matchup where that's not going on, it's a really good deal for the mana.
Time to offer up a trade. Gyre Sage, do you want to trade with this Soldier of the Pantheon? It's your call. The answer is no. Qadir's going to take 2, go down to 18, tie it up. Follow up with Judge's Familiar, so a little bird in the sky. Now, and for Qadir's deck, as far as spells are concerned, 2 Celestial Charm, 3 Ajani Call of the Pride, and then 2 copies of Adderthorn. The rest of this deck is creatures, creatures, creatures.
Yeah, and he has added Ajani, which was also my instinct when I was looking at the green-white list.
Now, what you can do here is you can stack things appropriately so they're in your favor so you can draw a card.
Ajani Call of Pride, also a nice little combo with Gyre Sage as well.
Absolutely. So Chronicler of Heroes is going to show up. This is the Theros, I would say all-star, but not even true, really. It's just a fine card. That's set. Nothing crazy. You see Qadir is going to explain that, yeah, I can stack my effects appropriately so that I can get the counter, the evolve counter, and then draw a card, which is exactly what he did. So Chronicler of Heroes did draw a card. You've got a 3-mana 3/3, and it's really telling. It is really, really telling that Smiter is just so bad that you actually play a card that cantrips and is smaller instead.
Yeah.
So the judge does look this over, unfamiliar with the combo. As I use combo loosely, as some of you guys might be at home, but this does work. You do get to peel a card.
Yeah. If it had the word "if" on it, it would trigger on announcement and resolution. So it would have to be. There would already have to be a counter in play for it to trigger.
That's correct.
But since it does not say "if," it just works with evolve.
Yeah. And now Gyre Sage into the red zone as a 2/3. And the thing about Gyre Sage in this deck is that it can grow pretty easily as far as Evolve is concerned. You've got some big creatures in this deck, like Pelucranos, like Boon Satyr, Advent of the Worm, where evolution on Gyre Sage is not very hard to do at all.
Even Fleece main line, I mean, you have 2 mana cards that are triggering this
Yes.
thing. So.
And, while Gyre Sage is, the fact that it adds mana is not irrelevant. But, that's not really that big of a deal. You can ramp your way up into, again, a Pelucranos, a large monstrosity activation, maybe an Advent of the Worm ahead of schedule or with another spell in the same turn. So there are things you can do.
Bestowing Boon Satyr.
Yeah.
There's a couple things.
Yeah, there are definitely things you can do with the mana. As you see the little creatures coming across here for Flores, going to knock Qadir down to 15. We'll see if Flores does have a follow-up. But here's the thing. Here's the problem here for Flores. His creatures can get outclassed very easily.
Yeah, he has to either have Spear of Heliod or Ajani to be able to make his creatures better at brawling, a really fast draw, or a bunch of Orzhov charms. If he actually has to, fight pound for pound with Qadir's deck, there's no way he can win.
So you see Aadil does have those 2 creatures in play. Gyre Sage sitting at a 2/3. Chronicler of Heroes, of course, a 3/3. Now, does have access to 4 mana right now. Don't know if he has a land to play. His mana base, pretty simple actually. 8 forests, 8 plains, 4 Celestia Gilgate, 4 Temple Garden. About as easy as it gets for a green-white deck. He's going to play an Ajani Call of the Pride, another way to put a counter on something to make sure that your Chronicler of Heroes does draw a card.
A lot of little synergies going on in this deck.
It's the
nice.
small ones, yeah. They don't always have to be impressive or dramatic.
And Ajani is just very powerful in creature decks in general. It's very good with little creatures because the plus power is good with them. And it's also very powerful with large creatures because the double strike and flying power is very good. And the green-white deck has a healthy mixture of both small and big creatures. So really making good use of Ajani.
An attempt to put a +1/+1 counter on the Gyre Sage. In response, Orzhov Charm is here. Let's see, Qadir's going to take a look at that, make sure he knows exactly what Orzhov Charm does do. And it's just going to kill that, and Flores is going to take a little bit of damage. Chronicler of Heroes can get in the red zone, which it's going to choose not to do.
Curious, as the Chronicler can currently not block anything.
Flores is going to take a look at the top card of his deck from the scry here with the Temple of Silence. Looks like Qadir may have missed out on 3 points of damage. That might come back to haunt him here. I wonder if Flores is going to go towards a Johnny or go towards the face. Going to go towards a Johnny. Down to 2. Follow-up. Looks to be a precinct captain. Maybe. And it is. All right, so the 2-2 first striker is going to join the fray. Qadir's going to untap. He'll take a draw step. He's got a couple Advent of the Worms in his hand. He does need a 4th mana for that. Selesnya Charm, it's okay.
Well, he actually needs a 5th mana right now as Judge's Familiar is hanging out. So
That's true.
he actually has to develop his board, find more lands, develop his board without having to cast Advent, and then find a 5th land, and then he can start deploying those Advent of the Worms.
Yeah, oftentimes, Judge's Familiar is just a 1/1 flyer with very little text, but this is the direct opposite of that. As Chronicler's going to come in.
The green-white deck is a little soft in the air, and it has 4 mana spells, so Judge's Familiar's text is very solid here.
Banisher Priest, which way is this going? I think that'll be interesting.
I would suspect it's going to go on the Precinct Captain, and then Ajani will plus it to turn into a 3/3, meaning cover Soldier of the Pantheon. And as predicted, here we are.
Banisher Priest, one of these white cards is actually starting to see a lot more play here. You've got 3 main deck copies here in Qadir's deck, and some on your side as well. 3 in the black-white humans deck, and then Shroud plays the full 4 in his green-white version.
In creature matchups, it's the most important thing. And then once people start putting Banisher Priest into their decks, you had to play your own because the best answer to Banisher Priest is your own Banisher Priest.
So Flores has a copy of Spear of Heliod in his hand. Also has a Brave the Elements as well. So 3 mana. Gonna get the Crusade into play. So Soldier's a 3/2 now. We'll see where that's headed.
Assume this would be going towards Ajani.
And attempt to finish that off, or if you'd like, you can trade. I can have my Precinct Captain back. And Johnny's going to bite the dust, so Qadir decides that it's much more important for me to have Banisher Priest in play if there's a 2/2 Judge's Familiar back on defense right now.
He also has another Ajani in his hand. So.
Okay. So let's see how he wants to navigate this turn.
The Judge's Familiar being left on defense. I don't know if that's to cover against a possible backup Ajani and a flying and double strike turn, but I think Qadir wants to set this up where he advances his board as much as possible. Flores is fairly low, and then use the Ajani in hand to give flying and double strike to finish off the game.
Yeah.
Although there also is some pretty big upside into, just casting Ajani this turn and adding that to your board. So a lot of different routes Qadir can take here.
Let's start by adding 3 mana. Let's not. Let's alt you. Trying to pace this game in such a way. I mean, Flores is already at 10, so, he's already kind of a favorite here, but he wants to make sure that he can actually close this game out in a timely manner.
Yeah, the Ajani is not quite lethal this turn. Flores would go to 1 with a flying double strike attack if Flores chose not to block with anything. So.
All right, the attacks are safe. So an attack here for 6 into a 2/2 Judge's Familiar. Looks like it's on chump blocking duty. And it is. So 3 damage are going to come across. Flores is going to go down to 7. Qadir just going to pass the turn back. This can represent a lot of different things when you're playing against a green-white deck, as Flores is going to draw a card. Looks like another copy of Spear of Heliod.
This could be Selesnya Charm or Boon Satyr.
Yeah. Judge's Familiar going to show up. As is Boros Elite. So starting to flood the board with some creatures here, which is what these white weenie aggro decks are trying to do. Be it with the black or white splash. Boon Satyr on the end step. Judge's Familiar. Can't counter that. So a 4/2 added to the battlefield. Qadir will take a draw. There's a Plains. So there's the 4th mana to be able to get Advent of the Worm, but as you mentioned, Judge's Familiar is going to make that difficult.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting, though, because Advent of the Worm can actually play the removal spell here for Judge's Familiar, get that out of the way, and make the attacks a little bit better.
Yep. Qadir also has access to Ajani to fly and double strike this turn, which effectively would kill the Judge's Familiar, as Flores is in a position where he's kind of compelled to chump block.
Nice thing here, too, whenever you're playing against the black-white humans deck with Soldier and Borstel and all that stuff, you're always thinking about Brave the Elements in the back of your mind. Make sure you don't lose to that card. However, you take a look at Qadir's board. Even though he's a green-white deck, he has a lot of permanents that are different colors.
Yep.
He's got Banisher Priest, which is white. He's got Boon Satyr, which is green. Advent of the Worm is just green. Of course, Chronicler of Heroes doesn't overlap well against Brave, but he'll be able to block some things as Boon Satyr is going to come into the red zone.
Yeah, good diversity of permanents, and that's not something you see a lot in standard decks. We see so many monocolor devotion decks, or single color splash a little bit of a second color, where Brave the Elements covers you against all their permanents.
Yeah.
It's atypical to see a deck where that's not the case, and it actually plays a critical role in those matchups.
Judges familiar, and Boros, look, they might be on blocking duty. Maybe this will be a defensive Brave the Elements. Soldier too. Everybody in the club. There's a Brave. I think if he would have waited, no, it can't wait with the Brave. He has to react first, because he'll lose too much if he doesn't.
Well, it's possible Qadir would be willing to use the Selesnya charm there.
Sure.
So there's some argument to just wait for him to pass because, you might be able to squeeze an extra pump spell out of the whole thing.
So after that exchange, Boon Satyr bites the dust in exchange for a Brave the Elements that was used defensively that go around. Qadir is going to pass the turn back. A Plains drawn here for Flores. His hand right now, he has a Zathra Necromancer and unfortunately another copy of Spear of Heliod, but there are 3 in the main deck.
Spear very powerful, of course, and also the second power of that, don't overlook that it comes up a lot in dragged out games, but
yeah, it's just a tough situation because the first Spear is so good that it leads you to want to play more of them. But there are diminishing returns.
And Spear is really good with Judge's Familiar too, better than with Dryad Militant, for example, so that leads you to possibly add an additional copy as well.
There's a Zathra Necromancer, and now Soldier of the Pantheon feeling confident enough to attack as it is a 3-2. And if anything bad were to happen, like this, Advent of the Worm, wouldn't matter too much. However, let's see if Flores remembers the trigger. He's going to gain a life, going to go up to 8, and we'll see if Judge's Familiar is going to counter that Advent of the Worm. Again, Advent of the Worm basically being used as a removal spell here, and it is going to resolve. So a 5/5 Worm token is what we'll get on the battlefield here for you guys. And again, don't forget, it's a green Worm token. Even though it's a gold card, the token is green. It's not green and white, so that's why it's able to block the Soldier of the Pantheon.
And we'll see momentarily if Flores remembers the trigger on the Necromancer as well.
Yep. And it looks like they're just waiting for some tokens to be given to them. We'll have a zombie that comes into play tapped and a worm token come into play. So there's your worm. And a 2/2 will be here shortly.
So Flores remembering both triggers. I compare Soldier of the Pantheon to being a Major League Baseball player a lot. If you're successful 30% of the time, you're doing really well with your Soldier triggers.
And now he's going to show in a Johnny.
And Johnny flying double strike on the worm.
Yep. It has trample.
That's lethal.
That's an attack for 10. -2 is 8. And that happens to be what Flores is at. So Aadil Qadir is going to win this first game over Melanie Flores. Green-white aggro up a game against black-white humans. And the green-white aggro deck is, again, this is much different than Shroud's version, but it's still impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the principles are the same. Once you decide that, I don't know, it's a chicken and the egg thing a little bit with Ajani and then all the evolved stuff that's going on. But once you have one of those cards in your deck, you definitely want the other. And it's really easy to imagine wanting either Ajani or Dire Sage. They're both totally reasonable cards to want to be playing on your own. And then that really leads you to want to add the other one. So a bit of a different take, but similar principles. He's basically cut all the anti-mono blue cards from his main deck to add this package.
We'll take a look at the sideboards here. We're going to start with Melanie's sideboard. Black-white humans, again, the deck list that Pat Cox, Ben Stark put on the deck. Ben Stark making top 4 at Grand Prix Dallas. What's the 15 he can work with?
Well, the sideboard is 3 Sync Collector, 2 Boomblade, 1 Ultimate Price, 1 Fiendslayer Paladin, 2 Dark Betrayal, 3 Thoughtseize, a Frontline Medic, a Renounce the Guilds, and a Profit Loss. I really like Frontline Medic a lot in this matchup. Wendy's creatures are outclassed so fast that the battalion trigger on Frontline Medic can allow it to your team to keep attacking, keep getting in when the board gets locked up. Frontline Medic is at its best against green decks. I anticipate it coming in here. And then the additional removal spells. I think you'll see the Ultimate Price and the 2 Doom Blades.
As far as on Qadir's side, 2 Mistcutter Hydras, 3 Glare of Heresy, a Selesnya Charm, 4 copies of Skylasher. Starting to see those a lot more now. Maybe that's why Mono Blue hasn't been so good recently. A Banisher Priest, 2 Unflinching Courage, and 2 copies of Advent of the Worm to go along with the 2 in the main deck. Glare of Heresy, we'll start there because that's going to be coming in. Banisher Priest number 4 will also be coming in. Now, the other ones are kind of interesting. Selesnya Charm, there's one in the sideboard. Oftentimes you don't find Selesnya Charm in the sideboard, but it is a good sideboard card if you're playing against a Desecration Demon deck. We're not in this situation, but +2/+2 and Trample can actually be good, as can be making a 2/2 Soldier. So maybe you want the other one of those?
And he has, it's worth noting he has so many gold creatures in this deck that Soldier of the Pantheon is kind of annoying too.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to make a single color token to be able to block that.
You've got 4 copies of Skylasher. Obviously not going to come in here because not playing against Mono Blue. More copies of Advent of the Worm when you're playing against a deck that has Judge's Familiar, but Advent of the Worm is the biggest creature on the battlefield and can win the game all by itself. Also, Judge's Familiar didn't counter Advent of the Worm in the last game, so maybe Flores doesn't know that he can counter it.
It is somewhat surprising to see 2 in the main deck and 2 in the sideboard, since Advent is the best card in this deck in my mind, and I can't imagine the matchup where you're shaving Advent of the Worms. That said, if they are slightly underpowered against this deck, as he has access to Orzhov Charm, additional terrors after board, and Judge's Familiar, as you mentioned, but the raw power of Advent of the Worm is so high, I would really struggle to say no.
And then last but certainly not least, 2 copies of Unflinching Courage. I think you have to bring them in here. I think they're just too powerful not to.
I think if we were playing against the red-white deck and you were only talking about slogging through Banisher Priest, it would be a thing, but if Melanie has any sort of sideboard for the matchup at all, it's additional removal spells. I understand the upside's very high, but the floor on Unflinching Courage is also very low, so I'm curious to see. I'm pretty risk-adverse in these spots. I don't think I would go to Unflinching Courage, but certainly unopposed, it's game over.
Well, we'll see if the Courage does come in as we're underway in game number 2, Soldier of the Pantheon. The best start for Flores' deck is what will get things underway. As you see, a Gyre Sage is the draw here for Qadir. Temple Garden, probably the best land in the deck. Certainly the best land to have on turn number 1. Even though you have to take 2, now all your mana's online, and Experiment 1 is where Qadir will begin.
Well, probably most of his mana is online. There's still Banisher Priest, Advent of the Worm, so it's possible still to actually not have all
That's
your
a
mana
nice 2-color deck.
Right. That's a 2-color deck. That's a nice 2-color deck.
Dawn Elemental, Rushwood Elemental. They need to be in the same deck, I think. Gala Shrine going to come into play untapped. Follow-up is an Ultimate Price. And, Experiment 1 kind of created a problem there where you actually had to clear the way to get Soldier through. It's not the best card in the world, but it is kind of this threat that's annoying because it's going to grow over time, and you want your Soldier to be able to attack, so you have to use a removal spell, but now Gyre Sage just showed up, and it's this situation where it's like, well, kind of want to use a removal spell on that, too.
Yeah, Melanie's removal is at a premium. The green-white deck with no shortage of really high-powered threats, some of which can be played at instant speed, so instant speed removal is really, you got to, use it sparingly, because it's going to be taxed in this matchup.
Zathra Necromancer before combat is going to make this Soldier feel just fine about getting into the red zone. Qadir's going to go down to 14, but now Gyre Sage is out there that can do its thing. No Burning Tributaries to go along with it, thankfully for Flores, but we'll see exactly what Qadir can put together on this turn, as he's going to start with the Plains.
You can see Banisher Priest in Qadir's hand, which is a very powerful play this turn, potentially removing the Necromancer and evolving the Gyre Sage.
You see 3 mana is going to be tapped, and that's exactly where he's going to go. So Banisher Priest, is going to show up to the party. Necromancer is going to go underneath it. Gyre Sage is going to evolve and get into the red zone for 2. So Flores is going to go down to 16, but we'll go back his way. He'll untap, he'll take a draw. There's a copy of Daring Skyjack added to his hand. Also has a Soldier of the Pantheon hanging out as well.
This is a small thing, but if I was in Qadir's seat, I think I probably would have held back that turn.
Okay.
His deck is much more powerful, but it's a little slower. He's on the back foot. He certainly doesn't want to be blocking with Banisher Priest this turn. And, Brave the Elements is this thing that looms over everything. Even though you think you can have the board stabilized, you can still lose to Brave in a game that gets dragged out. So I would have probably taken a slightly more defensive posture that last turn.
Qadir's going to go down to 12. After this attack from the Soldier, and we'll see what Flores wants to add to his board. Again, does have the Soldier, does have the Skyjack in hand. You see an Orzhov Charm there as well. So what to do for the Black-White Humans player? Going to start off with looks to be the 2-1. There's also a Boros lead over there too, so there's some really nice options here for Flores.
A lot of pressure in his hand and additional Orzhov charm as well.
2 mana. Orzhov Charm is going to kill the Gyre Sage. A little scared about the mana that can add. Also, the green mana means that from the worm could come out too. So an untap and a draw here from Qadir.
Also, you're really worried about that Banisher Priest, or about that Sage rather, to not want to get your Necromancer back there. Yeah.
So Qadir with the Banisher Priest, that likely can't attack this turn. Probably doesn't want to trade with the Soldier, but we'll see what he decides to do on this turn. Did draw an Experiment 1. Chronicler of Heroes will not draw a card right now, of course. But maybe he really did need that Gyre Sage. We're going to find out.
Different threats in his hand. He did have that Chronicler online last turn, but that is now sailed. Just adds another Sage.
So here's an attack for 4.
Trading off, and this is sort of what I was talking about with that attack a few terms ago. You're definitely one on the back foot, the one with the power in hand, and now it's a race against time if he's going to have actually enough time to deploy everything.
Here's a Precinct Captain and a Boros Elite. And pass the turn back. So taking a draw.
Another Experiment 1, and again he's only got 1 green mana, so those Experiment 1s are effectively his whole turn in this spot.
Maybe the Orzhov Charm was good on the Gyre Sage.
Definitely was good that turn, that's for sure.
There's a Chronicler of Heroes, no cantripping, and a gold permanent, so the old Soldier can keep running through it. And if Flores finds a removal spell, finds a Mutavault, could be in some serious trouble. How do you feel about attacking with everything this turn?
It's too early for that, I think.
This Chronicler's obviously going to get in front of that, and some damage is going to get pushed through.
I think I would have just sent Soldier of the Pantheon that turn.
Okay. Chronicler should still be alive. It's a 3/3.
Yeah.
So Precinct Captain only 2 first strike damage, so we'll get that fixed for you guys at home. But a Mutavault and then a Daring Skyjack is going to fix things here. Yeah, because that Chronicler, I promise that's not dead. There you go. Doesn't just draw cards, big body.
Yeah. What doesn't it do?
So Qadir draws a card. Flores is empty-handed. All the cards on the table for the Black-White Human side. Mutavault ready to fire up at a moment's notice. Daring Skyjack ready to get flying because there's plenty of creatures to trigger the battalion. And then Boros Lead, only a 1/1 right now, but will be a 3/3 when it gets in the red zone next turn, assuming that it does. Unflinching Courage in Qadir's hand, a card that we were unsure if it was going to come in or not, but it might be a card that can steal the game right now.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that he's only gaining a couple life this turn and loses a blocker, and Flores has quite the board, but...
So an attack here for 5.
Unflinching Courage is certainly pretty powerful right now.
Those cards make things really interesting, because attack for 5 puts Qadir up to 10, puts Flores down to 8, and then Flores can strike back with everything. That'd be attack for 3, 6, 7, 8. That'd be a lethal attack. So Banisher Priest would be priced into having to block, and then you get your Zathir Necromancer back. So that's kind of interesting. Also, you just win, most likely, if you draw a removal spell. Because your removal spell will likely cost 2 mana. Now, there's a chance it's Banisher Priest, and you can't attack anything. But there's also the 2 mana removal spells like Orzhov Charm, or like a Doom Blade or Ultimate Price type card. You kill the Banisher Priest, and you just get in for lethal. Let's find out. That's a frontline medic. I don't think that changes anything.
Well, it raises the cost of attacking with that Mutavault.
Well, I just think you still attack with the Mutavault and just get in with everyone because it would be a lethal attack.
Yeah, getting back your Necromancer's got a lot
you're gonna
of upside.
you're gonna get back your Necromancer that can block the next turn. So I think I would want to fire up Mutavault and get in with everybody. It's kind of interesting because Frontline Medic is this big splashy card that's like, oh wow, I get to attack the following turn, and then all of his blocks are bad. But I think Flores has correctly deduced the situation of attacking. I think you got to get in with that Soldier too, though. Because again, you want to present lethal, 3 from the Elite, 3 from the Skyjack, 2 each from the Mutavault and from the Soldier. That's an attack for 10. Your opponent's a 10, so Qadir has to block.
Yeah, you can't attack only halfway here. It's got to be everything.
The big question is, do you trade or do you chump?
It's a really good question.
Because he chose the line of trading with the
Yeah.
soldier. However, if you chump block, you gain another point of life, so it could be at 3 right now, but then all those creatures are still out there. So
It's close. It's real close.
Qadir draws his card. Again, has a 5/5 Chronicler of Heroes out there. There are some cards that would end the game on the spot. A Johnny would be one of them, but does not have that. So looks like there's a Gyre Sage over there. That's going to come down. The Voice of Resurgence is going to come down. Going to evolve the Gyre Sage into a 2/3. Red zone it is. Attack with the 5/5. Now Qadir's going to go up to 7 from this attack no matter what. And Flores is either going to end this turn at 5 or 3. But will also, get the opportunity to get a 2/2 because Necromancer dies. So the block seems pretty favorable, I think, at this point. Because you're going to get a guy and you're going to save yourself some damage.
Yeah, it's the same thing for what your board looks like for next turn and probably the turn after.
Yeah.
And the 2 life matters so much right now.
Got Sam Black in the house here. So an untap. A draw. A Doomblade. A good
Doomblade.
draw.
Very good against a creature with unflinching courage on it. That's a good draw.
Let's see what kind of attacks are meant to be had here. Maybe it's time to pump the brakes. Just kill the creature and move on with life and maybe try to outdraw your opponent.
I understand that instinct, but it's also really risky to do that against green-white because Advent and other powerful cards.
Also
and
true.
You've seen Unflinching Courage. I mean, you don't have a lot of time, most likely.
So I'm going to kill this and then activate the Mutavault. I think this might just be a lethal attack, right? Biggest
Yeah,
creature
this is
Boros
just
Elite.
lethal.
Okay, so Doomblade actually gives the check mark. Boros Elite gets in front of, runs into the Voice of Resurgence and attack here for 3 in the air from the Skyjack, 2 from the Zombie, and 2 from the Mutavault, which also is a zombie. Makes it so that it will be exactly lethal. And that is going to do it. So Melanie Flores is going to tie this one up here. Black-White Humans does get game number 2 over Green-White Aggro, and we're headed to a 3rd and final one, and both players look like they might be heading back to the sideboard.
And, not to harp on this, but again, this was, if you go back to that attack on the 3rd turn, if Qadir is going to win that game, it's because he generated an overwhelming board, gained a bunch of life, whatever. The extra 2 points of damage, maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't, but it's trading 2 for 2 is way more likely to favor Flores there than Qadir, and he died to an exact lethal attack.
If you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan starts the Games Open Series here in Orlando, Florida at SCG Live, hashtag SCGORL for your tweets as we're in round number 6 of 10 here. And we have 2, again, underrepresented decks doing battle at 5-0. It's actually good to see. No devotion here.
Yeah, we've had a lot of mono black on camera thus far, but this round we're seeing quite a bit different. 2 different decks. We've seen black-white and we've seen green-white aggro both be prevalent in the metagame. We saw Andrew Shroud take green-white aggro to a 2nd place in last week's Open, Black-white was kind of the hotness going into the Invitational in Las Vegas. It was one of the decks that was definitely the deck to beat among those decks to beat. Taking a back seat for the last month or so, but doing quite well here.
It's just nice to have not have mono black for a round.
Yeah,
We've
seen a lot of it.
A little change, but we know that at least one mono black deck is 5-0, so there's that.
The man who defeated Andrew Schneider last round.
Yeah. Jose moving on to
Jose.
5-0. So let's watch a 3rd and final here between Flores and Qadir is going to mulligan immediately, and he will be on the play.
Both players going back. Mana, colored mana, very sensitive for these 2 decks. They need to have 2 colors of mana very early in the game. Not a lot of dual lands in the black-white deck. And the green-white deck is playing a lot of basics of both colors, so the mana is rough in both of these decks.
When was the last time 2 color decks had really good mana?
Last time 2 color decks had really good mana. That's a great question.
That seems like such a weird question to be asking. But
Right, usually the 3 color. The judges the 2 color decks often don't have enough dual lands to bridge all the colors they're trying to put together. Whereas 2 color decks had to play either 1.5 colors in essence, play a bunch of basics of 1 color, or they had to be evenly split and play infinite duels. So these 2 color decks, a little dodgy on the mana, but a lot of power definitely crammed into them as well.
all right, let's take a look at the 6 cards here. Between the players.
Both of these decks get a lot of non-functional hands on 6 cards.
It happens
too.
a lot, yeah.
Both players keep.
All right, Temple Garden to start. No 1-drop, but the best land in the deck to start the things off here with a Boros lead on Flores' side. Temple Garden on tap, 2 of them. Must be nice. See what the follow-up's going to be here for Qadir. Obviously, he has a spell to play. There's a Gyre Sage, so that one presents a threat immediately, and we've seen Flores kill that in the past.
And Flores appears has brought in Fiendslayer Paladin as well.
I wonder how much of an impact that card has in this matchup. Certainly good with the Spear. Ultimate Price going to take that down immediately and attack for 1. So kind of the same decision of ultimate pricing, or just killing Gyre Sage immediately. And now here's a Voice of Resurgence. Follow-up is a Celestial Eagle getting past in the turn back with the idea to evolve the Gyre Sage, but Voice does provide a problem for the white weenie deck.
Yeah, without Soldier of the Pantheon and without Zathrid Necromancer, it's really hard to trade favorably into a Voice. It's very powerful against beatdown decks that are trying to attack on the ground.
Copy of Fiendslayer Paladin passing the turn back. So Qadir is going to play, another Gyre Sage and just pass back. So Fiendslayer Paladin, in theory, can get in right now. Zach the Necromancer is the draw.
Yeah, this is not a bad attack.
I think it's also a situation where I don't think that Qadir can actually afford to block, just because there's so many things that are being represented here, just with open mana, that you just have to take the 2.
Yeah, certainly a removal spell would be disastrous if you block there. So
here's a Boros Elite. And just passing the turn back with spells available, Brave the Elements, what have you.
So a lot of power in Qadir's hand right now. It looks like there's an Advent and a Pelucanos. And this might be one of those games where we see Gyre Sage have a really big impact.
Yeah. Chronicler of Heroes is going to come in. You're going to see the same trick from game number 1. Evolve trigger results first, then you check for Chronicler. Yes, there's something with the counter in play. Happens to be that Gyre Sage that was just evolved, and a card's going to go to the hand.
A big turn in a number of respects. Adding a 3/3 to the board prevents Fiendslayer Paladin from attacking next turn. And the bottleneck that Qadir has right now is mana. That's the big thing.
And now here's an Experiment 1 and passing the turn back. So Flores will untap the Fiendslayer and the Plains. Brave the Elements still hanging out over there. Brave is good to go in this particular game because green is
right
exactly
now
where you want to be. Yeah. So Brave is in a good spot. We see an attack here.
This is ambitious.
All right, Battalion triggers. Maybe before blocks. If you before blocks Brave, that's 3, 6, 7, 8. Put here down to 7. And if you had another Brave, you could just chain Braves together and win the game. But it doesn't look like Flores has that line of play. So
there's a Brave in hand.
yeah, we know there's one. We do know that. I'm trying to force through some damage, and again, with untapped mana, it just makes it a little bit scary. See, some blocks are going to take place here.
Yeah, but Qadir's blocks are really good right now.
Yeah, and it's almost like, that Brave the Elements, how much does it accomplish?
Yeah, you got Voice of Resurgence off the table. Arguably, the token is worse for you right now than the Voice is in play, as you're not really going to be removing much of Qadir's stuff, and the board's only going to get bigger.
Yeah. See if Voice Token going to come into play. Experiment 1's going to evolve because the Voice Token came into play. So it seems like, yeah, now that's going to evolve too. So it seems like a lot of bad things happen on that exchange.
Trying to chain together Braves, I think, is would have been a reasonable path to pursue, but now.
And now here's a frontline medic. So now Gyre Sage is a 3-power creature. It can add 2 mana. You see Advent of the Worm there in Qadir's hand. I believe Fleeceman Line was the draw. Another card that can get a counter in this deck is the Lion due to Monstrosity.
So many counters.
It's a combo deck.
Like a counter combo theme deck, basically.
A counter combo theme deck?
Yes.
Okay. Counter combo. Got it.
Token
Okay.
theme deck. Combo deck. So now Qadir is definitely incentivized to attack as much as he reasonably can, as Frontline Medic makes blocking much worse.
This just seems like a game where multiple spells can come down now. You know, because Gyre Sage is going to provide 2 mana, potentially 3 mana with an Advent of the Worm showing up to the party or something of that nature. So it seems like this might be a turn where you can really unload the grip. Might be starting with V-Sling Line, maybe Voice of Resurgence. Both are actually pretty good right now. It is going to be a Voice. So, yep, that will not evolve. So he did catch that. It's already sitting at a 2-2. Had it been Fleeceman, it would have evolved. And now the Voice token is going to come in. And that is a 5-5 with the potential to become bigger depending on what happens. But that's a 5-5 right now, and Chronicler of Heroes at 3-3 coming in. And all of these exchanges right now would be good for Qadir, just as long as he gets the frontline medic off the board.
Right. You know, like I said, I was critical about Qadir's earlier possibly too aggressive attacks, but now he actually has to be aggressive because he can't be defensive anymore.
So here's an attack. With the Voice of Resurgence token, that's a 5-5. Evan Irwin representing that. A 3-4 Gyre Sage and a 3-3 Chronicler of Heroes. So all the damage is going to come through, so it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's a healthy amount. All right, Flores going to untap. Potentially. We want to make sure they get the life totals right, looks right.
So a really good push by Qadir that turn.
Yeah, I mean, you really got to turn the corner and just try to get the game over with. Have our life totals updated here for you, Qadir. 12, Flores at 7. Frontline medic ready to go to battle here for Flores. Going to make blocking very difficult for Qadir, but the tough thing here for Flores is that Voice of Resurgence really, really, really wants to block.
Yeah, oddly enough, both players are actually kind of squeezed here by Frontline Medic on Flores' side and Voice on Qadir's side. Both players sort of have to attack, and both players kind of don't want to be attacking. Yeah. It's a weird setup right now.
Let's see what the play is going to be. Again, you see the 4 creatures out there for black-white humans. 2 Boros Elites, a Fleeing Slayer Paladin, and that frontline medic. I believe the Zath the Necromancer was added to the hand, which is, you know, a fine card in this situation. I'm not sure if it changes anything, in which you got to try to get this game over with quickly if you're Flores. So here's some mana being added.
Yeah, the Necromancer doesn't add a lot in terms of Flores' ability to survive this turn, because all the tokens come into play tapped. So the game has to go on for, it has to get back to Flores' turn for the Necromancer to accomplish much.
Well, that's what's going to be added to the table. So there is Zath the Necromancer. You're going to pass the turn back. So for Qadir, you got to be thrilled because you weren't attacked by anything. But then again, there weren't really very many good attacks. So now you get to untap all your permanents. Your creatures are larger, and while the Necromancer does make combat a little bit more interesting, see an Advent of the Worm drawn, you're actually probably happy with the outcome there.
And usually in spots like this, a really big edge is given to the first person. The first person who says, I can't attack this turn anymore, the other person has an enormous advantage.
Yeah, the first person to stop attacking. oftentimes loses in situations like this.
Right, especially since Qadir has a Voice of Resurgence in play, so any trick that Flores wants to play inside of combat is a huge cost.
So let's see what Qadir wants to do, because now you see Pelucranos over there as well, and that card can win the game basically on its own if he gets another untapped step, because that would come down, it would evolve Gyre Sage. That'd be more mana, be able to pump in the Monstrosity activation. It really seems like Gyre Sage is a card that really holds this deck together. Just this is my first time watching this deck in action, really, and the mana that card provides, it seems like it's crucial in this deck.
Yeah, if this was some normal 2-mana creature, I mean, Qadir almost certainly loses this game.
This looks like a safe attack for 5.
Well, definitely with Zathra Necromancer in play, attacks are safe.
Yeah. Chronicler of Heroes.
Or sorry, blocking rather is
yeah,
quite
I mean,
safe.
blocking is safe and attacking is safe.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to slog through Zathra Necromancer and the triggers that it puts on. And so 5/5 and a 3/3 are going to come in. So we'll see what Qadir wants to do on, excuse me, what Flores wants to do with the blocks, as Qadir has made his attacks.
Yeah, I mean, giving up this frontline medic seems really rough to me.
I guess the question is, how much is it contributing right now?
It feels like it's contributing much more than what the other creatures in play contribute.
Okay. So Chronicler's going to die. Voice Resurgence token needs something. You've got 2 Zathra Necromancer triggers on the stack, assuming that Flores remembered. So 2 zombies should be coming.
Yeah, and we see a point.
Died.
We see a point over. So
it seems like there might be a little confusion here about did you remember the trigger, did you not remember the trigger, back and forth here. So we'll see what the decision is. Doesn't look thrilled about the decision. May have forgotten the trigger on Zathra Necromancer. Here's a Pelucranos now. Evolution there on the Gyre Sage and the Experiment 1, and passing the turn back does Qadir. So it looks like Flores did forget Zathra Necromancer triggers, as the humans did die. And there's a Precinct Captain, which is not going to have a huge effect. And there's a Mutavault, which is a human for Zathra Necromancer and does add a blocker and attacker to the table. But the cards are face up now, and now Qadir knows what he has to worry about and what he has to beat, and knows that Pelucranos has free reign over this game.
yeah, Pelucranos and Gyre Sage also quite the combo.
They're friends.
So
Yeah,
Qadir with
Pelucranos,
access to 6 mana right now.
he gets a counter,
Also gets a counter.
and then Chronicler of Heroes, you draw
Draw
a
a
card.
card.
It's a combo deck.
Right. And then you can use a Johnny to give it
Oh my goodness.
flying and double strike.
Wow.
potential. Yeah, oh yeah.
Slices, dices.
Like an onion, you just keep peeling back the layers, and then there's just more layers.
Into the red zone we go. 2 5/5s at the ready. Can add power to the board at any moment because of an instant speed advent of the worm.
Right. Further evolving the Sage and the Experiment 1.
Again, more combos.
Just
I love combo decks. This is the closest you're going to get to combo in Standard, by the way.
currently, yes. And slogging through this Necromancer is obviously very annoying, but another thing that it's doing is shutting out Brave the Elements as an out as well.
Yeah, you're cutting off outs right now. That's probably the important part. So Mutavault's going to go active. It's time for some blocks. This could get ugly in a moment.
Yeah, the problem is with blocking with too much stuff, Qadir can use the Pelucranos inside of combat to kill just the Necromancer, and then the rest of the house of cards collapses. But if you don't block with enough stuff, then you're just sort of spinning your wheels with these chump blocks.
Yeah, you can just die.
Yeah.
Especially when Qadir knows that your hand is just face up. So, he can attack however he'd like because no cards in hand and all the creatures are on the board. So he knows exactly what he needs to play around. Which right now is the power and toughness on the creatures and Zathra Necromancer making tokens. So looks like we're going to have a pretty big gang block here. It's 5 there. And we're going to see a monstrosity activation. So shoot down the Zath the Necromancer before damage. You do get a zombie token, but now I can eat these humans alive with my Hydra. So 5 damage is going to come across. Lucranos gets to eat that Borosleet and that Mutavault. No trigger from Zath the Necromancer because it's gone now before combat. And again, more than happy to pass the turn back if you're Qadir. Flores is going to draw a card. And I'm not quite sure if something exists to get back into it. See, Mutavault was the draw. That's just another chump blocker in this situation. Kind of what green-white does, man. They just make bigger creatures. They just go bigger and bigger and bigger until you die.
We have 5 lethal attackers against 4 blockers.
That
so
is
that's
correct.
Gonna do it.
And so that is going to do it. Aadil Qadir does win this match 2-1. Green-white aggro over black-white humans. And I know, again, that Brad Nelson had written about this deck last week, and Michael Jacobson playing it on his stream a ton. Wasn't sure if it was the real deal. Looked pretty impressive there. And between this and Andrew Shrout's version of green-white, maybe green-white might start to, become a deck to beat now.
Yeah, I think the mono-blue matchup, I suspect, is not very good.
Yeah.
Between the bounce spells, Tiebinder Mage, quick clock, I think blue has a lot of pieces to be good against green-white. But against little creature decks, you just go over the top of them with much better threats. We saw in that match, Flores was casting 2 1s and 2 2s for 2 mana, while Qadir was casting 4 4s and 5 5s and what have you.